Yo, we got Shanks and Scoper teaming up to fight the emu-enhanced Herald, who many fans think is one of the strongest characters in the verse. We got Loki and the legendary Devil Fruit that can help him surpass even Herald in this form. We got Ragnar acting crazy, more details about how emu's insane powers work, and more, so make sure to stay tuned for this epic chapter. It's a really good one. Now, chill the parking with it and smash that like button if you enjoy seeing One Piece reviews like this one on the channel and want to keep them coming. Make this the video you join the Nakam if you haven't already by subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss future One Piece videos and updates. For example, Christmas break is coming up for the Shonen Jump magazine, so a chapter isn't scheduled for next week officially, but you never know if the next chapter will be released earlier than expected, so make sure you're subscribed so you get that notification even if it drops early. And now, without further ado, let's jump into it, spoilers and all. So last chapter we left off with Herald finally realizing how bad he messed up. Herald has come all this way so that he could help Elbaf escape the cycle of fighting, and yet Emu plans to use Herald as a puppet to create an army of giant warriors. Herald makes it clear that he doesn't want that, obviously, but it doesn't matter because now that he accepted the Depth's Covenant, he is, as he offered to be, a slave of Emu's, and Emu can take control of him without keeping their end of the deal. Herald thought to himself, there was never any intent to bring us into the circle of the world, damn you, Emu. In one of his final acts of free will, he tells his men to tie him up and to call Ya-Rule and his sons. Hyruden is out at sea, so Loki and Ya-Rule are the only ones that can be summoned on such short notice. When told Loki is in prison for what he did, Herald commands him to be released. So clearly Herald has not lost faith in his son, Loki, even if everyone else has. We'll definitely see more of that and his trust in him in this chapter too. And that brings us to the much anticipated chapter 1169, translated as have to die as soon as possible. One can imagine this is Herald's true thoughts since he finds himself in a very similar situation to the one his best friend Rox was in. He's being controlled by Emu against his will, and he's begging people to stop him as soon as possible. Unfortunately, Roger and Garp aren't here, so the question is, how will the people on Elbaf be able to pull this off? The chapter starts hype right off the bat with Shanks and Scoper talking at Scopper's house. It's expanding on the scene we saw back during chapter 1152. And gotta mention this again, man, Scoper has a cool house. You can see the castle from it, it's a great view, but it's still quite a ways away, having privacy as well as beauty. It's even got a Zen garden feel going on the balcony, one of my favorite pads in One Piece for sure. The topic of conversation is no less awesome. It's about Ace. Shanks is just learning that Roger had a son. Scoper tells him that he met with Garp, who seems to have been on relatively good terms with the Roger pirates after the God Valley incident. Scoper learned from Garp that Roger had a son, and now Scoper is passing that on to Shanks. So not surprisingly, Shanks says, ooh, then Captain's son would be like my younger brother. So yet another way Luffy, Ace, and Shanks are all connected. Scoper says something interesting in response, saying, yeah, like you and Buggy are our sons. It makes sense, but it's still cool to see Scoper in a way taking ownership of Buggy too. Not just Shanks, who's obviously everyone knows is awesome. Buggy, especially in the past, has been seen as subpar, but it's cool that Shanks not only views him as a brother, but Roger, Rayleigh, and Scoper viewed him as a son too. The legend and image of Buggy continues to grow, and I'm sure his followers would be very hyped to hear this. Then there's something interesting that didn't make it into the spoilers as far as I can tell. Shanks comments about Ace carrying Roger's blood and wonders if he is going to be the next generation's pirate king. Obviously, we know now that that's not how it panned out. But even then, Scoper knew it wasn't so simple as all that. Scoper says it's not hereditary, you know. Those who are expected, surprisingly, don't end up taking the world. There you go. What more proof do you need that it's going to end up being Buggy that finally does it, since he's obviously the one you'd least expect? Shanks, for his part, asks, is that how it is? And Scoper says, the world is darker and more interesting that way, you know, and laughs. You can't deny he was bang on about Ace. Not that he wasn't a good character, but he definitely didn't get close to being the next Pirate King. Now, even Luffy, the grandson of the Marine hero Garp, that's definitely a more unexpected Pirate King story, so I think Scoper would have an easier time swallowing that pill, if you go by his own philosophy. We then cut to Alru's castle. Loki and Yarul have arrived. Inside the castle itself, we see that Harold's body has cut down his own man who had brought the chains to tie him to a pillar. The contradictory things we see from Harold in this chapter are clearly explained as flashes of Harold in control and then IMU as they fight for control over his body. We know IMU is gonna fully take control eventually, which is why the title about having to die as soon as possible is so important, just like it was for Rocks. Harold even senses that IMU isn't only affecting his body, he feels that soon his mind and thoughts will also be changed according to IMU's will. He comes to the logical conclusion that as long as he lives, he will make the country of Elbaf worse. His body has become harmful for the nation he's been working for all this time. He realizes that everything he's done, his 144 years of life, will be pointless if he lets that happen, so he must die as soon as possible to not undo all that he'd accomplished so far. He refuses to let his people get turned into slaves, even though he was willing to get turned into a slave himself for them. Harold wants all the giant guards to kill him, and when they're stabbing him, Loki and Yarul enter the throne room and the same scene we saw in chapter 1152 is taking place. It looks bad, but in reality, the wounds are nothing to his new immortal body, which can easily heal. Now he wants the guards who stabbed him to run as his body takes its sword and starts to swing it, taking out all the giants around him. He wonders how can he die? He begs for help like Rocks did. We then jump back to Scoper's house and we get some of the information that I'm always longing for. Shanks explains to Scoper how the contracts with IMU work while showing Scoper the mark on his left arm. He says Harold and I formed a Shallows covenant with an entity called the Great One in the Holy Land. But even with just this Shallows covenant, if I'm within the distance of their ability, it would be impossible to go against their orders. The range has also been translated as a sphere of influence, so it could be a certain radius from where IMU is. And so this makes even more sense for why Shanks would willingly give up his arm when he was saving Luffy. It's one thing to symbolically give it up or to not have IMU being able to trace him or whatever, but here there was the very real threat of him not even having free will if he got close enough to IMU. So that it makes a lot of sense why he had to actually lose the arm. It wasn't just, oh, I might as well lose it because I symbolically want nothing to do with IMU. Shanks also let Scoper know that he did reveal his true self to Harold when they were together in the Holy Land, so they became friends. It wasn't just left at that one scene where Shanks acts horribly rude to him, which is nice. I'm glad to see it. It would bother me if Harold died while thinking that that was the true Shanks rather than the awesome character we all know. We see a panel where Harold is saying to Shanks, "I knew it. You are from the red-haired pirates, right?" Shanks says that Harold believes that if he joins the Knights of God, Elbaf will finally join the world government too, but that also means Harold must enter into a higher or deeper covenant. Scoper asks if that's bad, and Shanks explains that by forming that new covenant, the Knight of God gains superhuman strength and an immortal body. They are also given the power to generate an abyss that can help them traverse over great distances. However, in return, the Great One's voice will follow them to the world's end. No matter where they are, they won't be able to go against their orders. In other words, there is no radius or sphere of influence here. There's no escape. Shanks, like us, sincerely doubts that those greedy people will still keep their promises then when they have complete control over Harold. Now, on the other hand, you can say that this is obvious. Why even give Shanks credit for this? But still, I will give Shanks credit because some people in the One Piece world, like Harold, who it was happening to, didn't see it coming and Shanks was bang on. So you gotta give him some props there since it doesn't seem to be as obvious for a lot of these characters as it is for us. While this conversation is going on, we also see a really cute scene of Ripley and Scoper's son appearing behind Scoper's body, looking lovingly and listening intently to him. Love his character arc, which didn't need to be this good for the number 3 of Roger's crew, but it still was, and thank you, Oda, for that. Anyways, as Scoper is starting to see Shanks' point, they feel and we see a giant burst of hockey emanating from the castle. Cut to the throne room, and Loki and Yarul have pinned Harold to the floor. Harold confesses to Loki and Ya-Rule and the giant guards that he was doing dirty jobs for the world government, but now he realizes he has been fooled by IMU. He orders Ya-Rule to give Loki the legendary Elbaf Devil Fruit since he thinks that even Loki wouldn't be able to defeat him given Imu's power up. So let's take a second here and appreciate how much he's hyping up Loki here if we take this translation. The implication according to this translation would be that without the Imu power up, Loki would potentially be able to stop Harold. After this power up, many fans on the internet have been calling Harold one of the strongest characters in the verse, and yet Harold is implying that Loki does have a chance to stop him if he gets the legendary Devil Fruit power up. So to me, all of this is just insanely hyping up Loki, and one could assume he's gotten even stronger since this time. So I can't wait to see this guy go all out in the present day. Hashtag Loki for Straw Hat. I feel like with all this attention to Loki's backstory, his strength, and how good of a guy he actually is, Oda is making it more and more clear every chapter that he'll be joining the Straw Hats just like Luffy himself wants. And I want him to as well, and there's probably a reason Oda is making me feel that way. For example, I never wanted Momo to join the Straw Hats, despite how much time we spent with him, but I definitely want Loki to. Let me know if you agree in the comments. Then Harold talks to his son while crying. He says, "I have to die as soon as possible. Do it and sit yourself on the throne, Loki. Then tell the people what a fool of a king I was. Use my death to build your reputation. I don't give a damn what people are going to say about me after my death. What matters the most is the future of Elbaf. You understand, don't you?" Loki says, I'm speechless. Harold says, "I beg you, Loki. You're the only one I can count on." So yes, Loki not only didn't listen to Harold, he purposely took on the image of the greatest villain without defending himself so that, as Oda constantly reminds us, Harold would continue to be considered the most beloved ruler in the history of Elbaf. He did not want to besmirch his father's memory, no matter what the truth was or no matter what his own father told him to do. Loki, who was being presented as a demon, is turning out to be more like a saint the more we get to know him, and this chapter really brings that home more than any other so far. After he entrusts everything to Loki, Imu's influence begins to increase and Harold's mind is changed. Notably, Harold doesn't transform into a monster, Imu simply takes control of his normal looking body. So why not Domi reverse see everyone instead of using these contracts? Aside from the fact that the contract seems to be more flexible in how you use it, they're also not obvious. You could take control of someone without anyone knowing that the person you took control of has ceased to be. It can be a more smooth and secret kind of takeover, while as we saw with rocks, a lot of people can tell that something is wrong when Domi Reversi is used and that it isn't the same person. What's more, I'd assume Domi Reversi demons can't last indefinitely like the subjects of contracts, so although the two things seem similar, there are important differences and uses for both abilities. And I've already told you guys that I appreciate the contracts ability a lot more storytelling wise, because it just rubs me the wrong way that Domi Reversi can just take over people against their will, while at least in the case of contracts, they agreed to the contract, so it kind of makes it less OP and they kind of signed up for it. So that's my thoughts on that. But moving on, in a crazy double page, Harold starts killing all the giant guards. He orders the guards outside the throne room to seal all doors immediately because there are criminals in the castle. One giant guard stabs Harold's neck, but he recovers immediately. The giant guard says, "How dare you? You are not our King Harold anymore." Harold responds, "Don't be ridiculous, I'm still Harold, but now I'm a loyal servant of the Great One. None will survive, I won't let a word of what's happening in this castle get out." So it's pretty clear why Imu wants that. If no one except Harold survives to tell about it, then people can be convinced this is the real Harold and everything can proceed much more smoothly. It wouldn't be the first time Elbaf was a warrior-producing nation. If Harold switched his opinion in the first place, he could potentially switch it back again too. For his part, Loki runs to the treasure room. Harold then says under Imu's influence that he will be the one to eat the legendary Elbaf Devil Fruit, meaning Harold. Then he will give Elbaf to Imu. Ya-Rule attacks Harold to stop him, saying if Harold eats the devil fruit, the world will end. That's when Ya-Rule gets stabbed in the head and again makes the hilarious joke that he was saved by his helmet even though it went right through the helmet. However, it is likely that the sword through the head thing has a very real impact on his memory, which could be why he's never come out with the truth about Loki and Harold, even though he was there. This is when stuff really gets crazy. Shanks and Scoper arrive and attack Harold too, but even with these legends attacking him, he immediately recovers. When we find ourselves in these situations where there's a seemingly invincible opponent, the question always arises in me, how can Oda make defeating the opponent realistic and fulfilling? Here it helps a lot that not only will Loki seemingly have the insanely strong legendary Devil Fruit and Ragnir to help, he will also have the help of these legends, Shanks and Scoper. And even if Shanks was less strong in the flashback than he is now, he's definitely still strong, and Scoper is stronger arguably than he was in the present because of old age, so it kind of balances out anyways. Suddenly, we can see a possible path forward with these two legends here to help. And again, if you ask me, and I've been saying this from the beginning, I think Zebek is stronger than Harold. So because of that, I don't think it'll take someone like Garp combined with someone like Roger to go all out to take out Harold. I think these three will be able to get the job done. Harold says, Shanks, this immortal body of mine is fascinating. I can feel my superiority as an organism. Shanks says, damn it, is there no way to cancel the order? Loki now arrives to the treasure room with the help of Shanks and Scoper running interference. He unlocks the chains and opens the door. Inside, Loki sees a treasure box containing the fruit and the Ragnir hammer behind it. But something strange is going on since it seems like Ragnir was moving. Loki says the forbidden devil fruit passed down in Elbaf, eh? Then Ragnir moves of its own accord and attacks Loki, who barely dodges the attack. A strange voice says, get. Loki says, ooh, who is this? Now, this is purposely an interesting mystery to hook the reader, and as such, we can't be 100% sure what's going on here. Let me know how you interpret this moment in the comments, but it could potentially be the hammer acting on its own, perhaps with the effect of some sort of devil fruit, but since there does seem to be laughing, it could also suggest someone strong was there to throw the hammer. Although it wouldn't be the first time, like I said, where we've seen weapons communicate, and this one is obviously one legendary weapon. You throw in a potential devil fruit, and it's not a stretch at all. So either way, props to Oda for making an awesome chapter here that reps Loki harder than ever, in my opinion. Great cliffhanger mystery to finish it off, and I can't wait for the next chapter. Now, if you enjoyed this chapter, check out this video on screen right now that YouTube says you'll like, and subscribe for more One Piece videos like this one, and I'll see you in the next one.